In a distant corner of the galaxy, far from Earth and its bustling cities, an alien mercenary group known as the Crawl gathered aboard their sleek, black starship. The ship floated silently in the void of space, its surface absorbing light like a predator lying in wait. Inside, Vortak, the leader of the Crawl, stood at the center of a dimly lit chamber, his sharp eyes scanning the faces of his team. His second-in-command, Zarn, leaned against a wall with crossed arms, while Rock, the group's weapons expert, fiddled impatiently with a plasma rifle. The meeting had been called because of a message they'd received earlier that day. A wealthy and mysterious client had offered them a contract worth more credits than most mercenaries could earn in a lifetime. The job was simple on paper: eliminate a small unit of human special forces operating deep within contested space. But nothing about humans was ever truly simple, and Vortak knew it. He tapped a holographic screen floating in front of him, projecting an image of the target, a dusty, barren planet surrounded by swirling asteroid fields. "These humans," Vortak began, his voice low and gravelly, "are not ordinary soldiers. They've earned a reputation across the galaxy for being unpredictable and dangerous. Some say they're impossible to outsmart." Zarn snorted. "Impossible? That's just talk. Humans are fragile compared to us. One well-placed shot, and they're done." Rock nodded in agreement but added, "Still, there's something about them we should respect. I've heard stories. How they turn every disadvantage into an opportunity. How they fight as if they have nothing to lose." Vortak ignored their bickering and continued. "This unit is led by someone called Captain Ryan Hayes. Intelligence suggests he's one of the best strategists humanity has. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Laura Blake, isn't much different. She's known for her quick thinking under pressure." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "If we take this contract, we'll need to be smarter and faster than ever before." The room fell silent as the mercenaries considered the risks. Credits were tempting, especially when life among the stars often meant scraping by on scraps. But failure came at a cost too high to ignore. Alien mercenaries who went up against human special forces rarely lived to tell the tale. Rumors spread through the galactic underworld about squads vanishing without a trace, leaving only scorched earth behind. Finally, Zarn broke the silence. "What's the plan, then? We can't just march in guns blazing. These humans won't fall for anything obvious." Vortak smirked faintly, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "No, we won't. First, we observe, learn their patterns, their weaknesses. Then we strike where it hurts the most." He turned off the hologram and faced his team. "We leave in 3 hours. Prepare yourselves. This might be the most challenging mission we've ever taken." As the others dispersed to ready their gear, Vortak remained in the chamber, staring at the now blank screen. Something about this contract gnawed at him, though he couldn't quite put his clawed finger on it. Perhaps it was the way the client had spoken, with urgency masked by calmness. Or maybe it was the nagging feeling that humans always seem to surprise even the most seasoned warriors. Little did Vortak know, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Ryan Hayes and his team were already preparing for trouble. Back on their base, nestled between jagged cliffs on the dusty planet, Hayes addressed his squad. "We've picked up chatter about a possible threat," he said, pacing in front of his troops. "Could be pirates, could be worse. Either way, stay sharp. And remember, no matter what comes our way, we stick together." Lieutenant Blake stood nearby, nodding firmly. "They'll regret messing with us," she muttered under her breath, her hand resting on the hilt of her sidearm. Behind her, Private Jake Monroe exchanged a glance with Corporal Samantha Reed, both sharing a quiet confidence born from years of fighting side by side. Unbeknownst to either group, the stage was set for a clash unlike any other, a battle that would test not only skill and strength, but also the very essence of what made each side tick. The Krall's ship descended silently through the thick atmosphere of the dusty planet, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to even the most sophisticated sensors. Vortak and his team disembarked under the cover of night, their armored boots crunching softly against the barren ground. The air was thin and cold, carrying with it the faint scent of sulfur. Above them, two moons hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the desolate landscape. Through binoculars enhanced with thermal imaging, Zarn scanned the human base nestled between jagged cliffs. At first glance, everything seemed calm. A few soldiers sat around a makeshift table, playing cards and laughing loudly. Others leaned against crates, chatting casually or cleaning their weapons. It all looked so ordinary. Too ordinary. "They're not taking this seriously," Zarn muttered, lowering the binoculars. "Look at them. They're acting like they don't have a care in the galaxy." Vortak frowned, his sharp eyes narrowing as he studied the scene. Something didn't feel right. Even from a distance, he could see how every movement, even the smallest gesture, seemed deliberate. The way one soldier casually tossed a card onto the table matched perfectly with another adjusting his rifle nearby. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary chatter. These humans weren't just passing time, they were rehearsing without realizing it. Rock, eager to prove himself, spoke up. "Let's test them. A quick strike will show us what they're made of." Vortak hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Fine, but stay hidden. We need to gauge their response without revealing ourselves fully." The trio crept closer, using the rocky terrain to mask their approach. When they were within range, Rock raised his plasma rifle and fired a single shot, a bright blue bolt that streaked through the darkness and struck a fuel canister near the edge of the camp. The explosion was deafening, sending shards of metal flying in all directions. Panic should have erupted among the humans, but it didn't. Instead, the soldiers moved with precision, as if they had anticipated the attack. One man dove behind a crate while simultaneously shouting orders to his teammates. Another sprinted toward a mounted machine gun, firing bursts into the darkness where the shot had originated. Every action flowed seamlessly, like gears turning in perfect harmony. Zarn cursed under his breath. They knew exactly what to do. No hesitation, no confusion. Vortak signaled for retreat, his instincts screaming at him to leave before things got worse. As they slipped back into the shadows, he couldn't shake the feeling that they had underestimated these humans. Back aboard their ship, the three mercenaries gathered in the briefing room, replaying footage from the failed probe on a monitor. "They're trained well," Vortak admitted, pacing back and forth. "But it's more than that. They act like a single organism, each part knowing what the others are doing without needing to ask." Rock frowned. Maybe they've dealt with mercenaries before. Maybe they've faced enemies who use stealth tactics. Or maybe, Zarn interjected, it's something deeper. Humans are known for their emotions, for fighting harder when they believe in something. What if that's what drives them? Vortak stopped pacing and stared at the screen, watching the humans regroup after the attack. He saw Captain Hayes emerge from a tent, his expression grim but controlled as he addressed his team. Nearby, Lieutenant Blake handed ammunition to a younger soldier, her movements calm and steady despite the chaos moments earlier. "We'll need a new plan," Vortak said finally. "Something smarter, something they won't see coming." Meanwhile, back at the human base, Captain Hayes called his squad together for a debrief. "Good work out there," he began, his voice firm but reassuring. "But let's be clear, whoever attacked us tonight isn't done yet. They're testing us, trying to figure out our weaknesses." Private Jake Monroe raised a hand hesitantly. "Sir, do you think they'll come back stronger next time?" Hayes nodded. "Count on it. But remember this, we've faced tougher odds than this. And we always adapt. Always." Lieutenant Blake stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the group. "We're not just soldiers. We're a family. That's what makes us stronger than anyone else out there." As the meeting concluded, the humans returned to their duties, their confidence unshaken. Unbeknownst to them, high above in orbit, the Crawl plotted their next move. unaware that their greatest challenge still lay ahead. Back aboard their ship, the Crawl gathered in the dimly lit command center. The mood was tense, the kind of quiet that felt heavier than any argument. Vortax stood at the head of the table, his claws tapping rhythmically against the cold metal surface. Zarn leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, while Rock stared at a replay of the attack on a flickering screen. None of them spoke for several moments, each lost in thought. "They're not normal," Zarn finally said, breaking the silence. His voice carried a mix of frustration and unease. "No one moves like that unless they've trained for years. And even then, it's not just training, it's something else." Vortac nodded slowly, his sharp eyes narrowing as he replayed the footage in his mind. He had seen many species fight before, but none like these humans. Their coordination wasn't just mechanical, it was almost instinctual. It was as if they could sense what their teammates were thinking without saying a word. Rock shook his head, still watching the screen. Maybe it's technology. Humans are always finding ways to cheat. Could they have some kind of neural link? Something we can't detect. Vortac dismissed the idea with a wave of his hand. "No. If they had something like that, we'd know by now. This is different. It's deeper." He paused, his gaze drifting toward the ceiling as if searching for answers among the stars. Humans fight differently because they care. They fight for each other, for their families, their homes, their beliefs. That's what makes them dangerous. Zarn snorted. "Care? You think caring makes them stronger? Sounds like nonsense to me." "It's not nonsense," Vortac snapped, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "When you care about something, you'll do anything to protect it. You'll push past pain, fear, even death itself. That's what drives them. Not weapons, not tactics, emotion." The room fell silent again, the weight of Vortac's words sinking in. For all their strength and advanced weaponry, the Crawl had never faced an enemy driven by such raw passion. Most mercenaries fought for credits or survival, not for love or loyalty. It was a concept alien to them, literally. Determined to understand their opponents better, Vortac ordered a deeper analysis of the human squad. Using stolen communications and surveillance data, they pieced together profiles of the key players. Captain Ryan Hayes emerged as the heart of the team, a calm, calculating leader who inspired trust and respect. Lieutenant Laura Blake was portrayed as fiercely intelligent, quick to adapt under pressure. And then there was Private Jake Monroe, whose file showed a history of personal loss yet incredible resilience. As the Crawl studied these details, something unexpected happened. Rock found himself drawn to Monroe's story. The young soldier had joined the military after losing his family to raiders, channeling his grief into a desire to protect others. There was a fire in him, a determination that went beyond duty. For the first time, Rock felt a twinge of admiration, not for the mission, but for the humans themselves. Meanwhile, on the planet below, Captain Hayes addressed his team once more. Standing in front of his soldiers, he spoke with quiet authority. "We don't know much about our attackers yet, but we know one thing. They're persistent. They'll come back. And when they do, we need to be ready." Lieutenant Blake stepped forward, her tone firm but encouraging. "They underestimated us last time. Let's make sure they regret it next time." Private Monroe listened intently, gripping his rifle tightly. He thought about his family, about the promise he made to himself to honor their memory by standing strong. Beside him, Corporal Samantha Reed adjusted her gear, her focus unwavering. Each member of the squad carried their own burdens, their own reasons for fighting. But together, they formed something greater than the sum of its parts. Unbeknownst to either side, the gap between predator and prey was shrinking. The Crawl had learned that humans weren't just soldiers, they were survivors, bound by bonds stronger than steel. And the humans, though unaware of their enemy's growing respect, continued to prepare for whatever came next. The stage was set for a battle that would test not only skill and strategy, but also the very essence of what it meant to fight. And why? Vortac paced the length of the Crawl's command center, his mind racing. The humans had proven themselves far more formidable than he'd anticipated. Their teamwork, precision, and sheer determination were unlike anything the Crawl had encountered before. But Vortak was not one to give up easily. He stopped mid-step and turned to face Zarn and Rock, who sat silently at the table. "We need a new approach," Vortak said, his voice low but firm. "Strength alone won't break them. We have to find their weakness. Every species has one." Zarn leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "What about fear? Even the strongest fighters can crack under pressure if you hit them where it hurts." Rock nodded slowly. "Humans are emotional. Maybe we can use that against them. Target someone they care about, someone whose loss would shake them." Vortak's eyes gleamed with interest. "Go on." The three mercenaries spent hours combing through intercepted communications, searching for clues about the humans' vulnerabilities. They discovered fragments of conversations that hinted at personal struggles within the squad. One name kept coming up: Lieutenant Laura Blake. Her brother had died in combat months earlier, leaving her devastated. Though she rarely spoke of it, her teammates often checked in on her, offering quiet support. "This is it," Zarn said, pointing to a transcript of a private message Blake had sent to Captain Hayes. "She's still grieving. If we can exploit that, we might be able to break her, and the rest of the team along with her." Vortak agreed, a plan forming in his mind. "We'll create an illusion, a projection of her brother. Make it seem like he's alive and in danger. Humans are weak when it comes to emotions. She'll hesitate, and that's when we strike." Preparations began immediately. Using advanced holographic technology, the Crawl crafted a lifelike image of Blake's brother, complete with audio recordings pieced together from old messages. The setup was intricate, designed to look and sound real enough to fool even the sharpest observer. When everything was ready, the team moved into position near the human base, cloaked and waiting. Back at the base, Lieutenant Blake stood guard near the perimeter, her rifle slung over her shoulder. The night was eerily quiet, the kind of stillness that made her skin crawl. She scanned the horizon, her sharp eyes catching every shadow. Behind her, Private Jake Monroe adjusted the settings on a portable scanner, double-checking for any signs of movement. Suddenly, a faint cry pierced the silence. Blake froze, her heart skipping a beat. The voice sounded familiar. Too familiar. She turned toward the source, squinting into the darkness. There, standing between two jagged rocks, was a figure she thought she'd never see again: her brother. "Laura." The figure called out, his voice trembling. "Help me." Blake's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she forgot how to move, how to think. Everything around her faded: the base, her teammates, the mission. All she could see was her brother, reaching out to her with desperation in his eyes. Private Monroe noticed her reaction and rushed to her side. "Lieutenant, what's wrong?" Before she could answer, the figure stumbled forward, clutching his side as if injured. Blake instinctively took a step toward him, her weapon lowering slightly. But then something clicked in her mind. Her brother was dead. She had seen his body herself. This wasn't real. "It's a trick," she whispered, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Turning to Monroe, she barked, "Stay alert. It's a trap." Monroe raised his rifle, scanning the area. Sure enough, the air shimmered briefly, revealing the outlines of several Crawl soldiers closing in. The illusion flickered and vanished, replaced by the harsh reality of an ambush. Captain Hayes heard the commotion and sprinted toward the scene, his own weapon drawn. "Report," he shouted, taking cover behind a nearby boulder. "It's the Crawl," Blake replied, her voice cold and focused now. "They tried to mess with my head, but they underestimated us." Hayes gave her a quick nod of approval before issuing orders. "Everyone, hold your positions. We're not letting them get the drop on us again." As the battle erupted, the humans fought with renewed intensity. Blake's momentary hesitation had turned into unshakable resolve. She wasn't just fighting for herself or her team anymore. She was fighting to prove that no amount of manipulation could break them. And deep in the shadows, Vortak watched with growing unease, realizing that his plan had backfired spectacularly. The ambush unfolded with chaotic intensity. Plasma bolts streaked through the night, illuminating the jagged cliffs surrounding the human base. The crawl pressed forward, their movements swift and calculated, but the humans were ready. Lieutenant Laura Blake stood at the center of the chaos, her earlier hesitation replaced by a steely determination that radiated to her teammates. She fired her rifle with precision, each shot finding its mark as she shouted orders to coordinate their defense. Private Jake Monroe crouched beside her, reloading his weapon while keeping an eye on the enemy's movements. "They're trying to flank us," he yelled over the din of battle. Blake nodded sharply. "Hold your ground. Don't let them split us up." Captain Ryan Hayes moved along the perimeter, rallying his squad and ensuring no one was left exposed. He spotted Corporal Samantha Reed setting up a portable EMP device near a cluster of boulders. "Reed, what's the status?" he called out. "Almost ready, sir," Reed replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "Give me 30 seconds, and I'll disable their cloaking tech." Hayes trusted her without question. Reed had a knack for turning the tide in their favor with her gadgets, and this moment was no exception. He turned back to the fight, taking down 2 crawl soldiers who had ventured too close to their position. Meanwhile, Vortak watched the battle unfold from a safe distance, his frustration mounting. His plan to exploit Blake's grief had failed spectacularly, and now the humans were fighting back with ferocity that bordered on reckless. Zarn and Rock joined him moments later, both looking battered and bruised. "They're tougher than we thought," Zorn admitted grudgingly. Even after the illusion, they didn't break. Rock clenched his fists. "We underestimated them." Again. Vortak growled low in his throat, his sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight. "This isn't over yet. Fall back for now. We'll regroup and rethink our strategy." But before the crawl could retreat fully, the EMP device activated with a loud hum. A pulse of energy rippled through the area, disrupting the aliens' advanced technology. Their cloaking fields flickered and vanished, leaving them exposed. The humans seized the opportunity, launching a counterattack with coordinated efficiency. Blake led the charge, her voice cutting through the noise. "Now's our chance. Push them back." Monroe followed close behind, firing bursts from his rifle as he moved. Together, they forced the crawl into disarray, pushing them farther away from the base. The aliens fought fiercely, but their advantage was gone, and morale was crumbling. Back aboard their ship, the surviving members of the crawl gathered in the command center, nursing wounds both physical and psychological. Vortak paced angrily, his claws digging into the metal table. "How did it go so wrong?" he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Zarn spoke up hesitantly. "Humans, they adapt. They don't give up, even when things look bad." Rock nodded slowly. "And they trust each other. Completely. That's what makes them dangerous." Vortak stopped pacing and looked at his team, his expression unreadable. "Trust," he repeated softly. It was a concept he struggled to grasp, one that seemed alien, pun intended, to his own species. Yet he couldn't deny its power. The humans had faced fear, deception, and overwhelming odds, yet they stood together, unbroken. "We need a new plan," Vortak said finally. "But not tonight. Tonight, we rest and heal. Tomorrow, we decide our next move." On the planet below, the humans celebrated their hard-won victory. Captain Hayes addressed his team, his tone proud but measured. "Good work today. You proved once again why we're the best. But don't relax just yet. The crawl will be back, and we need to stay sharp." Blake stepped forward, her face calm but resolute. "They tried to break us, but they only made us stronger. Next time, we'll finish this." The squad nodded in agreement, their bond tighter than ever. As they returned to their duties, repairing damaged equipment and tending to minor injuries, a sense of quiet confidence settled over the base. They knew the fight wasn't over, but they also knew something the Crawl had yet to understand. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't in weapons or tactics. It was in their ability to stand together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The morning after the battle brought a rare moment of calm to the human base. The sun rose slowly over the jagged cliffs, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. Captain Ryan Hayes stood at the edge of the camp, gazing out at the horizon. His mind replayed the events of the previous night, the ambush, the illusion, and the counterattack that had driven the Crawl back. He felt a deep sense of pride in his team, but also an unshakable awareness that the fight was far from over. Behind him, Lieutenant Laura Blake approached, her boots crunching softly against the gravel. She stopped beside him, her expression thoughtful. "You think they'll come back?" she asked, her voice steady. Hayes didn't look at her as he answered. "They're mercenaries. They don't quit until the—" Blake nodded, her hands resting on the grip of her rifle. "Good. I'm not done with them yet." Her words carried a quiet intensity that made Hayes glance at her. He could see the fire in her eyes, the same determination that had helped her overcome the Crawl's psychological attack. "You held your ground last night," he said. "That took guts." "It wasn't just me," Blake replied, shaking her head. "It was all of us. We're stronger together. That's why we survived." Hayes smiled faintly. "That's exactly what makes us different from them. They fight for credits. We fight for each other." As the two officers returned to the center of the base, Hayes called the squad together for a meeting. The soldiers gathered quickly, their faces showing a mix of exhaustion and resolve. Hayes stood before them, his posture tall and commanding. "Last night proved something important," he began, his voice clear and firm. "We're not unbeatable, but we are unbreakable. No matter what they throw at us, we adapt. We stand our ground. And most importantly, we protect each other." Private Jake Monroe listened intently, his fingers brushing against the barrel of his rifle. He thought about his family, about the promise he'd made to honor their memory by fighting for something greater than himself. Beside him, Corporal Samantha Reed adjusted her glasses, her mind already working on ways to improve their defenses. "We've faced tougher odds before," Hayes continued, "but this isn't just about surviving. It's about proving that humanity is worth protecting. That no matter how many times they try to break us, we'll keep coming back stronger." The squad erupted into quiet cheers, their spirits lifted by Hayes' words. Blake stepped forward next, her tone softer but no less powerful. "They'll come for us again. And when they do, we'll be ready. Not because we have better weapons or tech, but because we care. About each other, about our mission, about everything we're fighting for." Her words resonated deeply with the team. Each soldier carried their own reasons for being there: loss, duty, hope. But together, they formed something greater than any individual. It was this unity that set them apart, not just from the Crawl, but from every other species in the galaxy. High above the planet, aboard their cloaked ship, the Crawl watched silently. Vortax stood at the viewport, his sharp eyes fixed on the human base below. Despite their defeat, the humans showed no signs of fear or hesitation. Instead, they moved with purpose, reinforcing their defenses and preparing for the next attack. "They're still confident," Zarn muttered, standing nearby, "even after everything we've thrown at them." Rock shook his head, his usual bravado replaced by uncertainty. "It's like they feed off it. Every time we hit them, they get stronger." Vortak turned away from the viewport, his expression unreadable. "Humans aren't like us. They don't fight for money or power. They fight for each other, for love, for hope. That's what makes them dangerous." Zarn frowned. "Love, hope, those are weaknesses, aren't they?" "No," Vortak said quietly. "Those are strengths. Strengths we can't match." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. For the first time, doubt crept into the minds of the Crawl. They had always prided themselves on their skills, their technology, their ruthlessness. But now, faced with an enemy driven by something deeper, they began to question whether they were truly the superior fighters. Back on the planet, the humans worked tirelessly to fortify their position. Monroe shared stories of his family with Reed, who listened intently while tinkering with a damaged scanner. Blake trained with Hayes, honing their combat skills in case the Crawl struck again. Together, they prepared, not just for battle, but for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the end, it wasn't weapons or tactics that defined them. It was their ability to connect, to trust, to fight not as individuals, but as one united force. And as the sun climbed higher in the sky, the humans stood ready, knowing that their greatest strength lay not in what they carried, but in what they shared. Frustrated and desperate, the Crawl decided to abandon subtlety. Vortak had grown tired of their repeated failures against the humans. Enough tricks, he growled during a heated meeting aboard their ship. It's time we show them what we're truly capable of. Zarn and Rock exchanged uneasy glances, but didn't argue. They knew their leader was right. Every attempt to outsmart the humans had ended in failure. The aliens' advanced technology and tactical prowess had been met with unexpected resilience, teamwork, and ingenuity from the humans. Now, it was time for brute force. The Crawl deployed their most powerful weapon, a massive plasma cannon mounted on a hovering platform. The weapon was designed to obliterate entire structures with a single shot, leaving nothing behind but scorched earth. Under the cover of darkness, they transported the cannon close to the human base, careful to avoid detection. Once in position, they activated its targeting systems, locking onto the heart of the camp. Back at the base, Captain Ryan Hayes felt an unusual tension in the air. He couldn't explain why, but something about the quiet night made him uneasy. Lieutenant Laura Blake shared his concern. "Sir, it's too quiet," she said as they stood near the perimeter. "They're planning something big." Hayes nodded. "I feel it too. Tell Monroe and Reed to double-check the scanners. I want eyes everywhere." Private Jake Monroe and Corporal Samantha Reed immediately got to work. Using portable scanning devices, they swept the area for any signs of movement or energy signatures. It wasn't long before Reed noticed something strange, a faint electromagnetic pulse emanating from beyond the cliffs. "Captain," Reed called out, rushing over with her scanner. "There's something out there. Big. And it's powered up." Hayes studied the readings carefully. His jaw tightened as he realized what they were dealing with. "Plasma cannon," he muttered under his breath. Turning to Blake, he issued orders quickly. "Get everyone to high ground. Now, if that thing fires, we don't want to be caught in the open." The squad moved swiftly, gathering weapons and supplies as they retreated to fortified positions atop the cliffs. From there, they had a clear view of the base and of the Crawl's weapon as it emerged from the shadows. The sight was intimidating. A hulking machine bristling with energy, its barrel glowing ominously. "They're not messing around this time," Blake said, gripping her rifle tightly. "No, they're not," Hayes replied. "But neither are we." Reed stepped forward, holding up a small device she had been working on earlier. "Sir, I've modified the EMP unit. If we can get close enough, we might be able to disable that thing." Hayes considered the risk. Getting close to the cannon would mean exposing themselves to enemy fire, but staying put meant certain destruction. "Do it," he said finally. "Monroe, you're with her. Provide cover." The two soldiers nodded and prepared to move. As they slipped away from the group, Hayes turned to the rest of the squad. "Hold your positions. We'll take them down together." Meanwhile, Vortak watched through binoculars as the humans scrambled for safety. A smirk crossed his face when he saw two figures breaking away from the main group. "Looks like they're making a play for the cannon," he said to Zarn. "Let them come." But Vortak underestimated the humans once again. Monroe and Reed worked seamlessly as a team. while Monroe laid down suppressive fire, drawing the attention of nearby crawl soldiers. Reed sprinted toward the cannon, clutching her modified EMP device. Her movements were quick and precise, guided by years of experience. As she reached the base of the platform, Reed attached the device to the cannon's power core. With a press of a button, the EMP activated, sending a surge of energy through the machine. The glow in the barrel flickered and died, leaving the weapon useless. Vortak cursed loudly as alarms blared inside the crawl ship. "They've disabled it," Zarn shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Hayes seized the opportunity. "Now," he yelled, signaling his team to launch a full assault. The humans charged forward, catching the crawl off guard. What had started as a devastating attack turned into another humiliating defeat for the mercenaries. By the time the battle ended, the crawl were forced to retreat once more, dragging their damaged equipment with them. Back at the cliffs, Hayes gathered his team, pride evident in his voice. "You did good out there. Every one of you." Blake looked at Reed and Monroe, who were already laughing about their narrow escape. "We make a pretty good team," she said with a grin. Hayes nodded. "That's because we trust each other. That's why we win." And as the humans regrouped, the crawl retreated into space, shaken by yet another loss. For the first time, doubt wasn't just in their minds. It was spreading through their ranks like wildfire. The crawl's ship drifted silently through the void of space, its crew battered and demoralized. The repeated failures against the human special forces weighed heavily on everyone, but none more so than Vortak. The leader of the mercenaries paced the command center, his sharp claws clicking against the metal floor. His mind raced with questions he couldn't answer. Why had they failed? What made these humans so different? And most importantly, how could they possibly win? Zarn sat slumped in a chair, nursing a wound on his arm. "We can't keep doing this," he muttered bitterly. "Every time we hit them, they come back stronger. It's like fighting ghosts." Rock, who was cleaning his plasma rifle nearby, didn't respond at first. When he finally spoke, his voice was unusually quiet. Maybe it's not just about winning anymore." Vortak stopped pacing and turned to face him. "What do you mean?" Rock hesitated, glancing at Zarn before continuing. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about how humans fight for each other. For love, for hope. Maybe that's why they're better than us. We're just hired guns, working for credits. They're fighting for something bigger." The words hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Vortak stared at Rock, his expression unreadable. For all their strength and advanced technology, the crawl lacked one thing the humans had in abundance: purpose. Slowly, an idea began to form in his mind. Meanwhile, on the planet below, Captain Ryan Hayes and his team were preparing for the next attack. Though they had won the previous battle, they knew the crawl wouldn't give up easily. The squad worked tirelessly to reinforce their defenses, repair damaged equipment, and stockpile supplies. Lieutenant Laura Blake supervised the efforts, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Private Jake Monroe approached her as she inspected a newly repaired barricade. "Lieutenant, do you think they'll try something different this time?" he asked, adjusting the strap of his rifle. Blake nodded thoughtfully. "They're desperate. Desperate enemies are unpredictable. But no matter what they do, we'll handle it, together." Her confidence reassured Monroe, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. A storm they couldn't see yet. High above, aboard the crawl ship, Rock made a decision. Quietly, he slipped away from the main group and accessed a secure communications channel. He transmitted a message directly to Lieutenant Blake, knowing full well the risk he was taking. The transmission was brief and encrypted, containing critical information about the crawl's next move. Then, he deleted all traces of the communication and returned to his post, his heart pounding. Back at the base, Blake received the message late that night. She read it carefully, her brow furrowing as she processed the details. The message revealed the crawl's plan to launch a surprise assault from the opposite side of the cliffs, where the terrain was uneven and harder to defend. At first, she wondered if it was a trap, but something about the tone of the message felt genuine. She brought the intel to Hayes immediately. "Sir, I think someone on their side is helping us," she said, handing him the datapad. Hayes studied the message, his expression thoughtful. "Could be a trick, but if it's real, it's worth acting on." Blake finished for him. "If we set an ambush, we might be able to end this once and for all." Hayes agreed. The squad worked quickly, setting traps along the path described in the message. Mines were buried under loose gravel, snipers positioned themselves on high ground, and portable EMP devices were placed strategically to disable any incoming tech. As dawn broke, the Crawl launched their attack, confident in their secrecy. But as they moved into position, they triggered the humans' traps. Explosions erupted around them, sending shockwaves through their ranks. Plasma bolts rained down from above, pinning them in place. Chaos reigned as the mercenaries realized they had walked straight into a trap. Vortak roared in frustration, ordering his team to fall back. But even as they retreated, Rock stayed behind, ensuring his former comrades escaped safely. When the dust settled, the humans emerged victorious once again. Hayes gathered his team, pride evident in his voice. "Good work, everyone. We couldn't have done this without trust, and maybe a little help from an unexpected ally." Blake glanced toward the horizon, wondering who had sent the message. Whoever it was, they had proven that even among enemies, there could be honor. And as the sun rose higher, casting light over the battlefield, the humans stood ready for whatever came next. The Krall's ship was a shadow of its former self, damaged, disorganized, and filled with doubt. Vortak stood in the dimly lit command center, his sharp eyes scanning the faces of his remaining team. Zarn leaned against a wall, his usual arrogance replaced by exhaustion. Rock avoided eye contact altogether, his betrayal weighing heavily on him, though no one else knew for sure what he had done. "We can't keep running," Vortak said finally, breaking the silence that had settled over the room. His voice was low but carried an edge of desperation. "If we fail this time, our reputation is gone. No one will hire us again." Zarn straightened up, his tone defiant despite his weariness. "Then we hit them hard. One last attack. Everything we've got. No tricks, no holding back." Vortak nodded slowly. He had no other choice. The humans had outsmarted them at every turn, proving themselves to be more than just soldiers. They were survivors. But even survivors could break under enough pressure. "We strike tonight," Vortak ordered, "and I'll lead the charge." Back on the planet, Captain Ryan Hayes and his squad prepared for the inevitable. Though they had won several battles, Hayes knew better than to grow complacent. "They're cornered," he told his team during a quick briefing. "When predators are backed into a corner, they lash out. Expect them to come at us with everything they have." Lieutenant Laura Blake nodded, her expression serious. "We'll be ready. We've faced worse." Private Jake Monroe tightened the straps on his gear, his mind focused. Beside him, Corporal Samantha Reed checked her EMP devices one last time. "Let's hope these work as well as they did last time," she said with a small smile, trying to lighten the mood. As night fell, the human base was eerily quiet. The squad took their positions, weapons ready, eyes scanning the darkness. Hours passed without incident, the tension growing thicker with each passing minute. Then suddenly, the ground shook violently as the Crawl launched their final assault. Plasma bolts rained down from above, lighting up the sky like a storm. The mercenaries charged forward, their movements frantic but determined. Vortak led the way, his claws glinting in the flashes of light as he cut through anything in his path. For a moment, it seemed like the humans might be overwhelmed. But the squad held firm. Hayes shouted orders, coordinating their defense with precision. Blake fired her rifle steadily, taking down enemies with unshakable focus. Monroe and Reed worked together seamlessly, using EMPs to disable enemy tech while providing cover fire. The battle reached its climax when Vortak broke through the front lines, heading straight for Private Monroe. The two clashed in fierce hand-to-hand combat, the alien's brute strength matched by Monroe's training and determination. Despite being smaller and less physically imposing, Monroe used his agility to dodge Vortak's attacks, countering with precise strikes. "You fight well for a human," Vortak growled, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "But you cannot win." Monroe didn't respond. Instead, he feinted left, drawing Vortak off balance, then delivered a powerful kick to the alien's midsection. As Vortak stumbled, Monroe pressed the advantage, landing a decisive blow that sent the mercenary leader crashing to the ground. Vortak lay there, his body battered and broken. Looking up at Monroe, he muttered weakly, "No wonder no one takes contracts against you." Then, with a final sigh, he closed his eyes. The remaining Crawl, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. Zarn screamed orders to regroup, but morale was shattered. They scattered into the night, leaving behind their weapons and equipment. When the dust settled, Hayes gathered his team. "It's over," he said simply, his voice filled with relief and pride. "You fought like heroes." Blake looked around at her teammates, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat, but glowing with triumph. "We did it together," she said softly. "That's what made the difference." As dawn broke, the humans stood victorious, their bond stronger than ever. High above, the remnants of the Crawl fled into the stars, vowing never to oppose human special forces again. The aftermath of the battle left the human base quiet but buzzing with subdued energy. Captain Ryan Hayes walked among his team, checking on each member to ensure they were okay. Some had minor injuries, cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. The mood was a mix of relief and pride, though no one allowed themselves to fully relax just yet. There was still work to do. Lieutenant Laura Blake supervised the cleanup effort, directing soldiers to gather abandoned weapons and equipment left behind by the Crawl. "We might need these later," she said, her voice calm but firm. Private Jake Monroe nodded, helping stack plasma rifles and ammunition crates neatly in a corner of the camp. Despite the physical toll of the fight, he moved with purpose, his mind replaying the final moments when he faced Vortak. He hadn't expected to feel anything for the alien leader, but there was a strange sense of respect, a recognition that even enemies could earn admiration through sheer determination. Corporal Samantha Reed sat nearby, tinkering with one of the EMP devices. Her fingers worked quickly as she examined its circuits, making notes for future improvements. Though the immediate threat was gone, she knew better than anyone that new challenges would always arise. "Never hurts to be prepared," she muttered to herself, earning a chuckle from Monroe. Hayes called everyone together once the area was secure. Standing before his squad, he spoke with quiet authority. "Today we proved something important, not just to ourselves, but to anyone who thinks they can take us down. We're not just soldiers, we're a family. And that's what makes us strong." His words resonated deeply with the team. Each soldier carried their own reasons for fighting: the loss of loved ones, a desire to protect others, or simply the hope of building a better future. But together, they formed something greater than any individual. It wasn't just skill or strategy that set them apart. It was their ability to trust one another completely. As the humans celebrated their hard-won victory, news of their triumph spread across the galaxy. Stories of how a small unit of human special forces had defeated the feared Crawl mercenaries traveled fast, reaching ears both friendly and hostile. Alien factions who had once dismissed humanity as weak now looked at them differently, with caution, respect, and even a hint of fear. The message was clear: messing with human special forces came at a cost too high to pay. Back aboard their damaged ship, the surviving members of the Crawl regrouped under Zarn's reluctant leadership. Rock remained silent, guilt gnawing at him for his role in the human success. Though he had helped save lives, betraying his own kind weighed heavily on his conscience. As they plotted their next move, one thing became certain: they would never accept another contract against humans. The lesson had been learned the hard way. On the planet below, Lieutenant Blake stood alone near the edge of the cliffs, gazing up at the stars. She thought about the battles they'd fought, the sacrifices they'd made, and the bonds they'd forged along the way. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel proud, not just of her team, but of humanity itself. They weren't perfect, but they were resilient. They adapted, they cared, and they endured. Behind her, Hayes approached quietly. "Thinking about the next mission?" he asked, standing beside her. Blake shook her head. "No, just thinking about how far we've come, how much we've proven." Hayes smiled faintly, "And how much farther we'll go." Together, they stood in silence, watching the twin moons rise over the horizon. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but they faced it with confidence. Whatever came next, they would face it together, as a team, as a family, and as representatives of a species that refused to back down. Their greatest strength wasn't in their weapons or tactics. It was in their ability to connect, to care, and to fight for something bigger than themselves. And so, under the endless expanse of stars, humanity's legacy grew stronger.